Welcome to Shaping the Basin. Today's guest is Dr. Gutierrez from Klamath Community College. I have a whole bunch of things that I want to ask you, but we did ask our viewers to ask some questions. So I'm going to start with those, and then we'll carry on. So one of the questions was, what is one lesson you learned outside of a classroom that influenced your leadership?
Okay, we'll start with a tough one. Probing question. Good for you, Heather. Out of the classroom, influenced my leadership. That is not in strong leadership. It's not about you. It's not about what you want. It's how you use what I believe are your God-given talents to lift up others and help others. And through me, is through higher education. That's the lesson in leadership that I've learned. And I try to do my best to implement that every day.
That's a great answer. And I think almost every leadership book I've read has said that, and you live that. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you, Heather.
The other question that got asked was, and I normally save this question to the end, so we're going to start there.
Okay.
But how is KCC evolving to meet the needs of today's students? We'll just ask that part.
Sure. Heather, I don't think a lot of, North Americans in the United States know the community college and how it evolved. Higher education started obviously in Europe, 1,500 years ago. And it started with the premise of only the good enough or the people that have strong connections can get into higher ed. So there was definitely classism. When we got that here in the United States, and Harvard was the very first one in 1636, I believe. I used to teach history. And then eventually we turned that in its head. Eventually we said, no more selective process. We're going to start the community college system, which is open access. So what we do is an American idea. What we do is that we take everybody that applies, unlike universities. So we're not selective. Obviously, universities get the valedictorians and all that, and that's good, and they're about research, and that's a good thing also. But we're very open access. That means that we get a lot of students that didn't do well many times in high school, or even high school dropouts to get their GED at the college, but they get to turn their lives around, because many of us don't realize the importance of education until sometimes later on in life, 30s, 40s, 50s. Then you realize, and that's where the community college comes in, because they get that second chance. And they do well, they excel. But the community college, Heather, is an American idea. And now it's actually it's gone throughout the world. England is implementing the community college system. It's interesting because that's where it started, a European nation like that. Australia is just implementing the community college system. But the gist of it is open access. Not a vice president or a dean gets to look at students' application and say, well, okay, you're good enough to come to us. No, everybody gets accepted. And that's the American idea of higher education, which is a community college system.
I did not know that started in the United States.
It's an American idea. And I'm very proud to say that, because I'm part of that. Mm-hmm. I'm a community college graduate. Most presidents come out of the university system, but I'm a community college graduate, so I'm very proud. I got that second chance, so I live that every day.
That's great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay.
Where did you come from?
Oh, sure.
What drew you to education? Tell us about that.
So, my parents were immigrants from Mexico to the United States, legal immigrants. But I was born in Texas. Started very in poverty many times, working. They were migrant farm workers. So I learned the value of hard work. But I also learned the opportunities this great nation, gets to offer, my parents and me. And eventually they became small business owners. And then they really pushed me to really, get educated and take advantage of the opportunities that they never received, where they came from. Many third world countries, you are born poor, you stay poor. And you're born rich, you stay rich. There's very, very small middle class. And that's not the case in the U.S. There's opportunities here. And I took advantage of those opportunities. Now, obviously, I work hard, but I took advantage of that. So then eventually I got my bachelor's degree in education, and my master's, and then later on I got my PhD at Oregon State University. But I started in the classroom K-12, started teaching there. Then I became a professor at a community college in the state of Washington. And then you do a good job, you work hard, and you get opportunities come your way, Heather, and then you move on. I became a director, and then I became a dean. A dean is like a principal in K-12. They oversee faculty and programs. So that's the term for higher ed. It's called the dean. And then I became a vice president, academic officer, overseed all academics in the state of Ohio, and then also in the state of Washington. And then I was nominated for this position here at Klamath by another president here in Oregon. And I said, let me look at this. And then here I am in Klamath Falls. That also provided some challenges because there was a lot of challenges at KCC and also in our community. Mm-hmm. But maybe that's another question later on. I'm not sure. So
good. When did you move here?
It was just amazing, Heather, that I start my 14th year in June. So 13 years ago.
Okay. I remember when you arrived here. But what was your first impression when you got to Klamath?
I like small communities. I grew up in small communities, but I've worked at big places, big colleges. KCC is the smallest college I've ever worked at. So I seen the potential in our community. Matter of fact, Chip Massey, he used to be doing your position years ago. He was on my interview, and I remember he still reminds me every now and then that I ask, where's the incubator? Where's the business incubator? So Heather, because I know the importance of small business, which is the backbone of the nation. It's not the huge companies that kind of come to our community and with 2,000 jobs. Many times it's the small communities. And I know the value of that. So that's why I asked during my interview process, where's the business incubator? And obviously he was the chamber president, and he said, boy, where is it? We don't have one. Mm-hmm. So anyway, then what were my first impressions? I seen the potential in our community. And over the years now, again, 13 years, almost 14 years, I have not been disappointed. But there's been challenges. There's still, Heather, I'm still disappointed in our poverty rates. I think we still have some work to do, but we've come such a long ways, since 13 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But we're still not there yet.
Yeah. Can you tell us about one of the challenges maybe at the college that you've overcome that you're really proud of?
Many times, the biggest challenge in this is you hear this constantly. We need more money, and so on and so forth. Many times that's not the answer, and so obviously when I seen the budget, and obviously it was sometimes paycheck to paycheck 13 years ago. So we set out on a vision. How can we look at other sources of income coming into the institution? And you don't do those things by yourself. You hire the right people with the right mindset. You hire the right administrators. You hire the right, faculty, teachers, and so on. And then you hopefully get a good board to support that common goals and common vision. So we did proceed, and we are now one of the most financially efficient institution in the state of Oregon. But a lot of hard work, because one of the things that I'm very proud of is that we don't do bonds. Unlike a lot of other colleges throughout Oregon, they just go to the community and they get a bond and they get new programs or new buildings. And from the get-go, I knew that our community could not afford that. And, to be very personal, I don't like to raise my taxes either. So anyway, we set out to find other ways to do this. And we have done that. We have grown, double the size of the institution. And to meet the needs of our community, when you have a well-educated, well-trained workforce, you attract business and industry. I mean, that's part of your role as a chamber president. You get to see that, and we attract, companies that pay strong middle-class salaries. And that's the goal. But really, if we have that well-educated, well-trained workforce that does that, and we're doing that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we want more, but we're doing that slowly. Sure. So I'm very proud how we've done that. We turned the institution around to be very financially stable, and we really have some excellent programs. Hasn't been easy, but nothing worth doing is easy sometimes. So part of it is you have to be committed to the work.
Said I'm all about it. Yeah, I'm all about it. Said I'm all about it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Said I'm all about it. Yeah, I'm all about it. Said I'm all about it. Yeah, 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 yeah.
If a picture says 1,000 words, imagine the story. 24 frames a second can tell about your business. 40 Deuce Films.
Congratulations on that, by the way, that all of that work paying off and the college growing. For a long time, are we still the newest community college in Oregon?
Yeah, we are.
And
Yeah.
when was it founded?
96. So
Okay.
it's 28 years old. Yeah, 28 or
So
so.
it's still
29.
the newest.
Yeah, the newest.
But since you've arrived in those years, it seems like, well, you said it's doubled.
At
It's
least.
done that. Tell us about some of the programs you created, that you helped create there.
Okay. One of the things that I found out, because some of these programs are very expensive, Heather, one of the things I found out is that you have to, look at partnerships. We're educators, and we're good at it. But we have to be careful that, well, let me give an example. As you probably are aware, that we're a childcare desert. And when businesses look at coming to our community, again, those good paying middle class salaries, that's one of the areas that they look at. I'm on the Casita executive board, and I see what they're looking at. I see the data, and we're childcare desert. So we set out several years ago, how can we help the community to do that? We have a early childhood education program. So I looked for a partner, and it took a few years, and we finally found a partner through Oregon Childhood Development Coalition. Donalda Dawson, she's the CEO. She has several campuses throughout Oregon. So we work together, and we have childcare on our campus. But my point is, we're educators. We're not childcare providers. In this example, they are. But through the strong partnership, now we're about to build a new building. There's going to be 150 or 160 slots. We're going to be the largest in Southern Oregon, second largest in the state. But that's that common goals, common vision, working with Klamath County, our commissioners. So they provided some seed monies to start that. They gave us 3 acres across the campus. So it's a 3-way partnership. And we hope to break ground this fall on a 29,000 square foot childcare building. And we're going to have our early childhood education program there. And plus OCDC will be running it for us. So that's an example of a 3-way partnership. Klamath, the commissioners in Klamath County, Klamath Community College, and Oregon Childhood Development Coalition. At the end, when we work together like that, the community benefits. A lot of hard work to do that. And we have to know, again, the point is that we have to know what we're good at. Again, we're good educators, but we're not childcare providers. And that goes through other areas that we've done. So that's just one example. And we will invite you to the Breaking Ground. We'll do hopefully sometime this fall.
I do have the gold shovels.
That's right. There we go. So yes. So that's one example. I'm very proud of that. And at the end, we help people. I was listening to a podcast. There's one of our students. Her name is Reina. And this podcast went across the state. And Reina talked about being a student at KCC. Again, she's in her 30s, second chance. She came back. She didn't see the importance of education until later in life. And so then she got into the early childhood education program. And then she got an internship at the campus with OCDC, because they're on our campus in a small building. And then she's talked about she wanted to get into this, but then she never thought that where she goes to school, she gets to see her children. And now she has an internship, and now she just got a job offer. And really, I have to say I got emotional, because as administrators, we're fixers, and sometimes those things are not pretty. But when you see human potential being accomplished through RENA, we have to savor those because they have to last a long time.
Yes.
So RENA is an example of that. And we shared that with our board. And I said, at the end, this is what it's about. It's about people and how we use education to elevate people's lives. And RENA is an example of that.
I like that. I think the other area probably that has benefited from some partnerships is you guys are, I think you're front runners in helping grow trades.
Yes,
You
that's
guys
right.
have the apprenticeship center.
That's right.
And tell us about that a little bit.
Yes, we've seen the data years ago before it became pretty common that we needed trades. Probably we started this vision like 7 or 8 years ago, and then we've seen the data, and then we've seen the need for apprenticeships. At that time, apprenticeships, you need transfer, you need those 4-year degrees or master's degrees. And I thought, no, we need trades because again, the connection to our local community. If we're going to elevate our community, we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need carpenters, we need welders. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are good jobs, good salaries. So we set out to have an apprenticeship center, and it took a while. Again, no bonds, donations, grants, and a lot of hard work. And we built an apprenticeship center, and about a $12 million project. And then we have the title to these buildings, so again, very financially stable at the college. And now we have an apprenticeship center. We have all those programs, and we're growing. We just started drywall, and we're also the connection to K-12, because a lot of, again, being a, high school teacher years ago, I remember a lot of my students did not do well with a lecture. They needed hands-on, and I was one of those too. I enjoyed, carpentry, and shop class. And then we started losing those classes, years later. So there was no more carpentry or those kind of classes in the high school. So we're working with our K-12 partners, the local superintendents. They get to bus some of the students to the apprenticeship center. They get to, take a pre-welding and electrician, and then they move on to regular apprenticeships. Sometimes unionized, which is the 4-year, or non-unionized. We do both. But we start at the high school. And then we really help those students that don't do well, just a lecture. And I believe that really helped us to really improve the graduation rates at the high schools, because years ago, that was a big problem. A lot of students dropped out. And I believe it's because they wanted hands-on. So I believe we have a small piece in improving those rates. And as you probably are aware, Heather, when you don't graduate or you don't have something after high school, this is a pipeline to poverty. And then at the end, we all pay for that. So we're helping to improve that. So those graduation rates are now, we used to be the worst in the state. Now we're one of the best. I think Henley has almost 100% graduation.
Fantastic.
And we have those partnerships with the hands-on at our apprenticeship center at the college.
I like that. So I'm going to bring it back to you a little bit
no.
your leadership, because I do think that's part of the reason KCC has grown. But it strikes me as you're talking about all of this, you are a problem solver. And do you have how do people develop that skill of problem solving? What advice would you give?
Heather, so, all right, I'm a teacher, so I'm going to give examples. Just like some people that are married, marriage goes up and down, but the biggest thing is commitment to the marriage. The ring, commitment. And my wife says, right now I don't feel in love with you right now, but we're committed, babe. So yes. So then bring it back. It's a commitment to the cause. So in reality, Heather, the biggest challenge for me is when you're successful, other people come and they want your services and they offer you almost double the salary to go to other places, and more monies, metro areas, status. But my wife and I made a decision a long time ago to be committed to this community. And the biggest challenge is to say no. When they come and they look for you, and I've had actually many board members call me and said, I'm not, I remember the last one that called me. Obviously, I'm not going to get into, what, in this case, it was a university. I don't know. I remember this specifically, and he was the board chair for this higher ed place. Dr. Gutierrez, I don't know what your salary is, but I can guarantee you we can double it. And I'd like to invite you to apply for our position. And he went on. And at the end, I told them I'm honored, but my wife and I really like this area, and we are committed to Klamath Falls and Klamath Community College. So the average president's position is for the reasons I just stated. It's about 4 years, and I'm about to start 14 years, and I'm so glad I did that, because Heather, many times presidents come in with a vision, what's needed, what they need to do, what's needed, and then but they don't stick around to see the vision being implemented, and many times that vision takes sometimes 10 years or more. The apprenticeship center, the child care center that we're looking at recently, and other visions. So I'm so fortunate and honored that after all these years, I get to see the vision being implemented and how it helps our community. And at the end, as was said a long time ago, that's priceless. And I wouldn't have it any other way,
Right.
So, but that's been a challenge, say no.
That's
So,
a skill we all have to learn,
yes,
especially the busier you
that's right.
get.
The commitment to the cause.
Mhm.
At the end, it's not about you. It's about helping others and using education, in my case, education to help people. Because at the end of our lives, and I'm getting philosophical here, it's not stuff that's going to matter. It's what we did for others that's going to matter. And I surely don't want, at the end of my life, I don't want to have regrets. So I'm doing things today as a leader to make sure years from now, there's no regrets. I did my best. And at the end, at the center of that is people.
I thank you for that. And thank you for your time
Absolutely.
today. So many good lessons and good things that we talked about. So thank you.
You're
I have
welcome, Heather.
3 quick questions
Sure.
to end. They're kind of hot seat questions.
Okay, here we
But
go.
if I
Fasten my
gave you
seatbelt.
yes, if I handed you $250,000 today to make a difference in the community, what would you do with it?
At the college or in our community, period?
In the community. It can
Okay.
be at the college.
Okay. Obviously, I have more, I'm about the college. So I would say scholarships for needy students at the college through our KCC Foundation, because that's what the foundation does. There's such a need, like, again, Reina. We work hard to make sure these students get good jobs, but there's no debt. There's no debt. We work very hard, and that's why we have the dual credit. We were one of the first ones to implement dual credit, at KCC, again, 10 years ago. So I would say scholarships to help students is an investment in people. And at the end, the goal is for them to be taxpayers and then give back. So it's not a free ride. We're investing in you with these scholarships, but later on, you're going to give back as a taxpayer.
Mhm.
So I would do $250,000 in scholarships at the college.
That makes sense. Do you have a podcast you would recommend to others who want to develop leadership skills?
Podcast. Probably there's so many authors that I've read, books. Obviously, my PhD at Oregon State was in leadership. There's so many authors, books. So what is one of the most influential authors? There's many, but probably Maxwell. Maxwell has a lot of strong leadership, but a specific podcast, not necessarily. I'm not aware of specific podcast. And also mentorship, that if you believe that you look up to a strong leader, well, talk to he or her, and then how they can possibly mentor you. And I've done that throughout my life. And sometimes people didn't realize that I was looking at their leadership and I was taking notes. I didn't ask them. I just seen what they did. And I took what was good. And sometimes, obviously, they're not perfect. And throughout my career, I've been in this business for over 30 years. I think KCC in this community has my influence has been influenced by all those leaders. So it's been implemented today, what I've learned from others. So
That's fun. Mentorship has come up in a lot of these. When I'm interviewing people who are leaders, I think it's just a highlight, an exclamation point of how important mentorship is
yes,
for
absolutely.
people. And then the last question,
Sure.
what's one thing you do for fun in Klamath?
Okay. There's a time where I have to get out, but I've been a motorcycle rider for years, and I used to race motorcycles years ago. I quit racing maybe 6-7 years ago. It was my son and I. We raced one last race, a desert race. This is off-road motorcycle riding. I do have the Milwaukee motorcycle, but I have most of the motorcycles that I have are off-road or dual sport. So what I did is, for example, last year what I did just to get away, I rode across the Cascades by myself, which is dangerous. My wife couldn't believe it. And I rode 700 miles. I started at in the Nevada border in Oregon, and all the desert across Oregon. This is off road, totally, single track, and then Christmas Valley and onto the Cascades, and I ended up in Hood River. That really pushed me. That was 7 days. It was camping by myself, but at the end, solitude is not a bad thing. That made me think, because I'm so busy and so. But it was, I got in trouble, I almost got heat stroke in the desert piece. I got a little bit in trouble, and I'm by myself. I do have a satellite system. If something happens, I'd push a button. But my wife, that was mandatory. She said, you need to buy that or else. So I said, oh, okay. So anyway, but I got heat stroke a little bit, so I had to stop for a while, for several hours, but that's what I do for fun. I motorcycle riding.
That's a cool experience.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, Heather. And thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. And thank you to our sponsors, Running Wire Resort and 40 Deuce Films.